Roll call. Arbaugh. Reamer.
Here.
Roy. Split.
Here.
Sackerson.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right. Approval of the minutes. Have you had a chance to look at them?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Any discussion? Any objection? Motion passes. All right, let's open the public hearing. Who's here to
We
represent?
have, we have via Zoom, Mark, he's representing the applicant, and then I think these gentlemen are here as part of the public hearing. So
Okay.
if you want to start with Mark, that would probably be the
All right.
Mark?
Yeah, happy to take it away. Well, thank you all for taking the time letting us present here. So, I'm working with Justin Krieger, who purchased this property last year, and as trying to backfill the Kmart, which some mentioned COVID, shortly before when they vacated, that has been a big void in the community. So kind of fast forward, there's a CSM that was approved by the city a couple years ago, and by doing that CSM, that put this property out of compliance with the current parking code. So the request is to we're requesting variance from the parking minimums required for this district, which is the B2, which is driven by the CSM that was approved and completed by the city a couple of years ago to create those property lines. And then in terms of anything going forward, uses that are permitted in B2, anything with conditional use would be coming back to different public boards at that time for approvals there.
What was the purpose of the original CSN?
So I think in your packet you have a copy of kind of a map, and I can pull up the parcel as well, just to show everybody, and give an visual of the site.
And Adam, feel free to defer to me on any of these questions. Again, this is as the applicant, we're happy to chime in as needed, so let me know.
I can just bring up the visual, but you can chime in if you want.
Yeah, sure. Well, the question was asked, why was the CSM done? Again, my understanding is that the CSM was created in order to allow the Webster's parcels that should be sold to the Webster family. So as a part of that, took the one parcel, had to split up into two, and what was left over again was the larger in terms of acreage parcel, and that's what Justin purchased last year.
So if you look at the map here, this is the parcel that was carved off and the city allowed to be incorporated into the larger parcel neighboring, right?
Okay.
So.
So basically the variance would,
So the code requires retail and commercial business, one parking spot must be provided for each 200 square feet of consumer floor space. So that's what the code says. And the property under its current traffic or parking lot count would not meet that threshold
because of that chunk that was cut off.
in general.
Okay.
It's worth pointing out as well, folks, that prior to that CSM being done, this entire shopping center only had a parking ratio of 3 per 1,000, and the code required 5. So even prior to that CSM, there would have needed to be, essentially this was this would have been a use that required a variance anyways. So when they split it up, again, not sure the whole method of the madness of how the line was picked up. Y'all can see how it jogged over. So there was some rhyme with reason to rhyme. What the parcel on the east, that does meet current zoning requirements, and this one is now well below that.
Okay. All right.
I'll start. Rob Webster.
Rob, why don't you come to the table?
Okay. And this is Phil Hoy.
Yeah.
He's from Hy-Vee. And John is also from Hy-Vee. First of all, let me comment on where you're at. That is not the CSM that was drafted when we bought the store. The CSM would have been a straight line out there. We were kind of felt necessary to buy that outlot because the first person who bought the Kmart building wanted to sell outlots to have more businesses there. And the city approved that, apparently. So I bought that outlot to protect the store, the parking, the future for our family and our employees, which are all going to be retained with Hy-Vee. And so that's, just so you know, that was a two-piece deal. And the second piece, I spent a bunch of money to make sure that you would have an adequate supermarket at that location, because who knows what the rest is going to be. They started talking about putting in storage and this and that, and then it got sold. Some of the paradigm changed. It's probably a good paradigm, but we got to be careful that we don't make it so that there's not enough parking for everybody that's in there. Now, I don't know how many square feet the entrance or the new group is wanting, but from what I understand, they're a really great retailer. And having a great neighbor as a great retailer is a wonderful thing. But my concern isn't just them coming in with their square footage, it would be now opening up the rest of the space and then putting more burden on everybody's parking, in addition to the fact that we've got to have place for snow in the wintertime, which is another reason I bought that. What would have happened if he'd have sold the other outlot? Then what would you have had for that space? So I guess what we're looking for is some sort of grant the variance for the parcel that wants to come in, but limit then the rest of the space to be used for storage and other things that aren't going to put a pressure on the parking.
Okay, so make sure that there isn't going to be another building put up on that
Another
lot.
building or even the use of the rest of the space, because they weren't talking about using all the space for this parcel. At least that's what it was when Justin talked to me.
Okay, so what you want to see is that the current parking lot stays a parking lot, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It has to stay a parking lot, one.
Okay.
And they shouldn't be able to run all kinds of outdoor events, because that's going to put extra pressure on, along with the fact that another reason we bought that space was to make sure we could continue our tent sales and our different things that we like to do. So, I know Phil is very concerned about how he comes into this meeting tonight and how we're presenting Hy-Vee to the community. Because what we don't want to do is come in and start that group with a negative thing. This is a great company. A lot of stores, a lot of little stores in small towns, employee-owned. It fits all our core values as far as serving customers, wowing customers, taking care of customers and employees. That's why we made this choice. We actually sold 2 years sooner than our plan because of the quality of the offer and the people coming in.
Okay.
We need, anybody else, public comment?
Can I make some comments, please?
Sure, absolutely.
So, Phil Hoy, Vice President of Real Estate with Hy-Vee. And as Rob pointed out, yes, we want to make sure that that our words aren't misconstrued. We want to be a good neighbor. We're excited about coming into the community. We think the Websters have run a great store, have great people. Met some tonight actually at dinner, and so we're excited about being here. The last thing we want to do is show up at your door and try to put up a big stop sign, because development next door only helps us too. So that's my number one overarching comment. I just want to make sure that's clear.
Okay.
We want to be a good neighbor. We want to be a good partner. At the same time, the two most important elements to a real estate selection and a store success is the parking and the access. And so the Websters wisely, years ago, bought that additional parcel to preserve their parking for their customers, for you all and for the community. So that's also has been important to us during this process. The application itself sort of mischaracterizes the situation in that the request for the variance has to be based on a hardship. And the justification is that the CSM created these new lot lines. But the reality is that the parking deficiency was created when the property was developed from the very beginning. So the new lot line is not a hardship that creates the need for a variance at all. So I think that justification as part of the application is incorrect.
Okay.
The center parks at 3 per 1,000. So even if you said that this was a cohesive center, it would need a variance regardless of any lot line adjustments whatsoever. The fact is, though, that this isn't a cohesive center, that there are separate lot owners as part of this development. There's the Webster's parcel and the other parcels. The Webster's parcel parks at 5 per 1,000. Is how we look at it, which is basically meets your code. It actually meets our standard too, which is about five stalls per 1,000. Is when we go and develop a site or buy a site or build a site, we develop it so that there's 5 parking stalls per 1,000 square feet. So for our standards, the Webster's parcel meets that. However, if there's a variance granted on the 90,000 square foot parcel next door, 90,000 square foot building next door, that allows them to park at anything, really. I mean, if that's allowed to be retail space, the fact of the matter is that it parks at 1.34, as your paper in front of you points out, which I would assume your downtown zoning isn't even that low of a requirement. We would be concerned, of course, that it's deficient, and then the people from those businesses can then park on the grocery store lot, and you all and the residents of this community, aren't able to have a safe, convenient shopping experience at the grocery store. So again, I come back to, we want to be a good neighbor. We want to see, as we understand it, the use that's coming in. We think it's very complimentary, but they're only occupying a portion of the building. But the variance request, as I understand it, is for the entire 90,000 square feet. So if that entire 90,000 square feet is allowed to be used for retail, it would be severely underparked by your standards today, but beyond, a variance request.
How would you propose that we solve this?
I think, as Rob pointed out, since this isn't a cohesive center, meaning that the parking easements that exist on this center, the lot owners have the right to not allow other lot owners, patrons, to park on them. So in other words, the Websters could prevent anybody else from parking on their parking. The easement allows for that. So, which means that if that 90,000 square foot box is filled with all retail, they would be severely underparked. If a portion of that building is used for retail, say half of it, and the other half is used for a non-parking intensive use, that might be a potential solution. But to allow the variance to apply to the total 90,000 square feet would likely to diminish the rights of the Webster property owner and their use to their parking. You put the burden of the parking on the adjacent parcel at that point, because their parcel can't support their own parking, which is a situation that was, again, created initially with the first development, and it was made worse by the lot that was sold off.
It sounds like what you're suggesting is that we limit the use of that building in some way, and I don't know.
That is not the body of the job of this board.
That's
That
not
is-
something
that is
we
the
can
code.
do.
That This is a
We can either
variance.
grant the variance or not, we can put some conditions on it.
Sure.
But in terms of the use of the building, that has to go, what, back to the planning commission?
Planning commission and any zoning, default to any zoning requirements.
Okay,
I think without knowing the specific use and the amount of use that's planned for the space, it would be unjustified to grant a variance for such a situation as this, given the limited parking stalls that are available in the space. I think just granting a blind variance and putting the burden of the parking on the adjacent parcels would be a taking, essentially.
there's nothing preventing people from parking in front of that building now, right? I mean, or,
There's nothing preventing anybody from parking on anywhere in that lot.
okay,
There's no barriers.
There's no
Right.
barriers or,
okay. Any other comments? Anything? Yes.
So, just two things. First, anecdotally, back in the early 90s when that was a bustling Kmart, a Walgreens, a video rental store, Cost Cutters, and Pick and Save. That was probably the peak of that development's activity. There was never a shortage in parking in that lot, from what I remember. So if the whole thing became retail again, I don't think there's going to be an issue. So that's point number one. Point number two is the 5 spots per 1,000 square feet was a benchmark that was set back in 1952 is when that was starting to be adopted around the country. I don't know when our codes were set, but that was developed in 1952 when all suburbia and all that type of development came about. But the current practice in modernizing zoning code is 3 spots per 1,000, 2 spots per 1,000, or about 2,500 communities of all different sizes in the country have completely eliminated parking space requirements and have fallen back to a recommendation, but not a requirement. So, considering modern zoning and these 2,500 communities, it's working for them. It probably will work for us. I am in favor of approving the zoning variance. So I'm here to speak in behalf of the applicant.
Their site doesn't even meet your 2 per 1,000 requirement. It's 1.34 stalls per 1,000 square feet on that box. It doesn't even meet the 2.
so.
But
so
that's
we
for
can-
total square footage, not.
Yep, so we have an applicant here, and the public hearing is gonna have to close, right?
Yeah.
And
Unless
Can I
there are any
make
other
one comment? Yeah.
Sure.
Just so you know, there are times when holidays come and stuff that parking lot was tight and is tight. When we run a big event, we generally had our employees park across the street in the hotel, which is now a church and a hotel, not a banquet hall and a hotel, which is a property that we owned and still own part of. So we did have to ask employees to park elsewhere just to run our events.
I mean, if we're not filling the parking stalls, we're not a business. And we don't make a huge parking lot just because we like to have empty stalls available. I mean, the larger the parking lot, the more there's to maintain, there's more to snowplow. We have that parking so that the community and customers have a place to park that is convenient. That's the reason why we have, like they said, the stall requirement that we operate under, which, as I said, is 5, which the site essentially meets and leaves space for a garden center in the summer or snow storage in the winter and those sort of things.
So we close the public hearing.
Yeah. We'll close the public hearing. Thank you. Any comments from the board?
So currently, this Webster's, this parcel B, meets our current statute of 200 square foot per square foot of retail space. So this stall number is well within that.
Okay.
Well within.
Yeah.
290 is what I got from my math.
So to take a step back, right? The applicant is looking only at parcel A, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Parcel B, in the original development, had approximately 446 stalls. We do not know at what point there was a change in the code or what standard was put in place at the development of this site, but the application of the current code as it was originally built, whether it was one parcel, Rob would probably know better than all of us if it was one big development or if it came in different waves or what. But there was not a standard of, the current standard was not generally met, right? The current site, when this was moved, right, made it incredibly harder with the loss of significant parking on the western parcel, right? So they're saying that is a hardship, right? In addition to the initial development of the site not being the same standard, right? So there are two factors here.
Yeah, compounded the issue.
Yes, it
Yes.
has compounded the issue.
But currently, parcel B meets our current standard.
Parcel B, based on whatever the customer square footage would be, so I don't know what the customer square footage is. But if they're-
57,000 is what
If
they're
that's the
saying.
total square footage, then it exceeds that even more, because it's customer square footage, right? It's customer, it's not the full building, right?
Right, so we're
So
well within.
even-
So if we compare that to parcel A at its current square footage estimate, they're barely a third of what the requirement is if we go off that.
And they are a bigger building.
Right.
They are the bigger building of the two.
Of the two,
They
right,
have more square footage and customer square footage,
right.
right?
Isn't, maybe not relevant to the variance, but is there a limit, if they wanted to put up, for instance, a Hardee's on next to the highway on that western parcel, is there anything to prevent them from doing that? Or is that?
Mark can answer that.
I'm happy to jump in there. Good question, because that's, I think, one of the concerns. For that to happen, we would have to go through the CSM process again, and at that time, all of it is fair game. So to go and subdivide and have that is where the approval would come in to say, is there sufficient parking for that? And if a parties were to go in there, I mean, that would take up, call 80 stalls. I mean, so that's why those are big. When you factor in drive-throughs, the whole thing, it is a big use. That's not being proposed, and I think that's what, again, when we focus on is what we're and maybe understanding what our future neighbors are saying is, we're not sure what the intended use is. It's an existing retail box, and it's all, nothing is changing in terms of the size of the buildings or the size of the parking lot. We are memorializing what we think should have happened with the last CSM, which was approved by the city to create this underparked, when I say underparked parcel that didn't have enough parking. There's one last also just general comments to make when it comes to parking. I mean, the market is, I again appreciate the concern of Hy-Vee of do we have enough, and the market will ultimately drive that. If we have users that are saying, well, they mentioned that, well, we need 5 per 1,000. Assuming other retailers, they're going to be working on that same piece. So to think that, no one's going to factor that in, we're expecting sophisticated businesses and retailers to come in and backfill this space. So that's something that everyone is factoring in at the get-go. They've mentioned their access and parking. That's exactly what all of the other retailers do as well. Access, parking, signage. So a lot of players, so happy to back up any places or any questions that folks have.
I have a question for him. What takes place by not granting the variance?
They would not, their proposed use would not meet the minimum parking requirements. Their planned development of this site would not be able to occur. They would have to either add parking spots,
Because it's retail that.
because there's a plan,
Proposed
there's
use.
a project that is being proposed in a portion of the Kmart building. And they would not meet that without somehow conjuring up 200 plus stalls on the site.
They don't own that property though, according to this property line. This is owned by Webster's,
Yes, that is.
not
owned by-
B.
Yes.
So
Yes.
parcel A, as long as they don't build a building on the corner, this is what they have.
That's what they did. Without knowing what that business is gonna be in parcel A, I'm still inclined to approve the variance to get a business in there. It could be a retail, I don't know, it could just be something that you're only gonna have maybe every hour, maybe 6 people coming and going. I don't know what it's gonna be. And without knowing, was it gonna be a 40,000 square foot to start with? Building or retail space? But they wanna go for the full building right away.
Mark, if you can clarify that?
I can speak to, yeah, so the current user we're talking to, part of the building, is going to take approximately 40,000 feet of the space. Per the current code, they would not be allowed to be in the building. So first off, we need a variance for that, but also, I mean, we're not able to, I mean, what we believe is, or what we've heard over and over, the desire of the city is to backfill the space. And per the current code, what that would allow is 20,000 feet. That's right, I don't believe that was what the city of Ripon was hoping for. It's also the comment that I heard that, right, you know, what user's going in there, you know, that's what your code lays out, what businesses are permitted to go in this B2 district. And if you look at, you know, what uses are typically need conditional uses or not allowed, are ones that tend to cause strain on what those uses are in that space. So we're not, you know, we don't have free reign to go and bring in whatever. We are under the rules of what is in the code that's in the B1 and then B2 spaces as well. And then there's other, there's uses that are called as conditional uses, which would require us coming to planning commission, I believe, for that, or this group, I forget. And then if it's one that's not on the list, you have to go and seek a full variance. So I just again want to make it very clear that there's not this no holds barred approach from here.
But this board doesn't have to approve this variance in the entire building either.
I don't want to create a hardship either with Webster's by granting a variance and then seeing, you know, 80,000 square feet of retail come in here and half of this person's parking lot being used. You know, they're gonna have to put up a wall there or something for it or patrol it, and I don't want to see that
If I
either.
may, yeah, so if I may actually just chime in there. Also, there is absolutely, Hy-Vee is going to be able to put up and say Hy-Vee parking only past this point. There's nothing that's stopping them from doing that. So I think that's where there's rules within, there's a declaration of easements that's in place between these two parcel owners that dictates what can and cannot be done. So I hear them trying to come here to have this board effectively try to have to get involved in what is between property owners. And it's one that can have a sign. Hy-Vee parking only past this point. All their towers will be violators will be towed. They're well within their abilities to go do that. So
But then it would be dangerous to approve a project that parks at 1.34 stalls per 1,000 square feet. If If the parking of those customers is not allowed on the Webster's parcel, I don't know why the board would approve a variance that's a third of the current parking requirement. For a whole building that they don't even know who the potential use is for, they could grant it for a portion of the building, but for the whole building with an uncertain future, when it's so underparked.
Can we grant a variance with a time limit that says we come back and re-examine this? say any-
Absolutely not.
No, it's, once we grant it, it's permanent.
Yeah.
We could recommend that the city reevaluate their parking policy, so it doesn't have to match that 200. But
Is there any land behind these buildings?
Yes, there is land and this is where, ultimately, you could theoretically add parking on the site, behind the structure. 'cause
Okay, so
there's
it does go
acres
deep.
back there. You could add parking spots all around here that add to the count, right?
Mhm.
Could do a ton of different little things to add parking to that.
Even on the side, it looks like we
Side,
could.
If it gets to be a problem, they can acquire property and add parking lot, right? Those are all things that could be done in the future, right? Without question, and it would add to, the numbers,
Mhm.
right? So,
But they wouldn't be required
And I
to.
could add in there, so I did some, so part of what I've done in past experiences is just for this piece, and a lot of mine has been, my background's in retail and in housing. Housing codes tend to have antiquated parking requirements as well. So what we would have is proof of parking. So if we get to that scenario and saying, this is a madhouse of it, there's not enough parking. And again, ultimately, that's bad for us, that's bad for business. If there is not adequate convenient parking, first off, we're not gonna be able to fill the space. And secondly, customers are gonna say, no thanks. So there is space behind the building. Once we download the garden stall, parallel park the west side of the lot, 90-degree park the south end of the lot. That would get us get us up to 326 stalls. So that parking on the north side is that for customers? No. Yeah, that's for staff and for. But that's something that if we do get to that spot, the space is there to go and add those stalls.
I personally think a parking problem is a good thing. It's just like our downtown, we always try to find better ways for parking on Watson Street. I don't, again, without knowing the business going in there, even though it could be divided up into maybe 3 different other businesses, I'm still inclined to think that let's approve it and then find out if it's a problem. And if it's a problem, just like that man said on the screen, they can purchase other property, they can park in the back.
But once you
I'm
grant
struggling to find.
it'll be out of our hands.
this- Yeah, once you grant.
Right,
this-
I understand
the
that,
problem
but
initially here.
if there is a problem, people won't go to that business.
Right.
They'll go to Hy-Vee. I mean, they're gonna be complementary businesses, I'm sure, that's what I've heard, that they're gonna work
Yeah,
together
the first
good.
part of the proposal for 40,000 square feet is
Yeah.
absolutely no problem with us.
Right.
No problem.
It's
We
the
want
uncertainty
it.
of the balance
It's gonna
of the
be
project.
great for Ripon, it's gonna be great for the site, it's gonna be great for Hy-Vee. The problem lies in what do they do with the other 40,000 or 50,000 square feet of selling area that's gonna create the issue. So that's what we wanna solve. We want a neighbor. I mean,
Yeah.
that's gonna be a win-win.
I guess that's the first point I made. We wanna
The
be a good
idea of
neighbor.
putting employee parking in back is great. Sorry.
Yeah, we've closed the public.
It's a public hearing closed. Thank you.
Yeah, can we, let's see, how do I want to put this? Can we grant the variance for up to 40,000 feet of retail space?
you can certainly do that. That's within the authority of the board but it does limit that property.
Well, it means that if they wanted to expand the property, they would have to come back to us or come back to the planning commission, I suppose.
And with 40,000, they're still under our suggested ordinance for parking. 40,000 puts them at 200 stalls.
It seems to me that given the history of this and given the fact that it's, the problem was created the day the cement was laid down, that I'm not comfortable just saying, go ahead, take the variance, park where, park as many cars as you want, as you need to. I think we need to proceed a little carefully here. And I would like to suggest that we approve a variance that limits that use. And I don't know if we can do that. Maybe that has to go back to the planning commission. But I would suggest that we would offer a variance that, at least currently, offer a variance that limits the use to 40,000 feet of parking, of retail space. And then if they want to expand, they have to come back to us or come back to the planning commission and find a way to do that. I don't know if that's within our purview. I don't know if we can do that legally. Maybe we need to kick this back to the planning commission.
No, I think you have the authority to grant a variance at any rate at which you see reasonable based on the hardship presented.
Okay.
So if that's one stall for every 1,000 square feet, you can say that is an acceptable measure for the property. You can say 2 stalls for every 1,000 square feet. That doesn't necessarily limit them to this project. It may limit the amount of space they can use within the entire building.
I like your idea, and I would make a motion for that to limit the retail to 40,000, which still
You're not
exceeds
limiting the retail, you're limiting the parking measure.
The parking based on a 40,000 retail space.
Which would be how many stalls?
200, and they still don't meet it, but
Okay.
they're much closer than what the 90 is.
All right.
Can I just add one note, please? The question I heard was, for them to come back. The reason we're here is because we're not able to effectively we're not able to enter into an LOI because the property doesn't meet code. So I hear this notion of saying, well, if we just approve the 40,000, well, then we're going to come back next month and saying we need the ability to market the rest of the space to go and actually say we can go and lease the space to a retailer.
But you can have the
An
project that's in
existing
front of you
retail
now.
building. So that's where I understand it's an incremental piece, but this is exactly why we're here to begin with. So we end up.
Okay, again, we can't put any limit on the use of the building. We can only deal with the parking lot and the number of cars that would be allowed in that parking lot.
But I do think, Dave, the problem, like you said, it started from day one.
Yeah.
There wasn't adequate for that square footage to begin with. I've never seen when Kmart was in full, swing there. I really never remember this parking lot ever being filled.
No, I agree,
So,
but
I don't
but I also
think-
I understand what Rob is saying, that on certain occasions that it's a press. It's Christmas and
Sure,
Thanksgiving and so on.
I understand the whole thing with the snow. Maybe this parcel A has to take their snow to the back,
No.
where they can't put it in the front, like Webster's always has piles up in the front. So that will dictate, that the owners will dictate that if they need parking all the way to Highway 23 almost, they won't put their snow there. I really don't feel that putting a limit on the square footage just to meet that number of stalls.
Again, we can't do that. We don't have that.
No,
We don't have
I
that
was
authority.
basing my
Right.
stall requirement
But-
off that 40 though.
And I know these stall requirements were put in the ordinance years and years ago. There's always things that come up like this that we need to do a variance. I just don't like the idea of limiting this, whoever this person wants to rent these other square
Well,
footage
No, I
to.
don't either, but we're.
Because it makes the city look like you're not
It's a dilemma.
friendly.
I guess what I'm, John, I hear someone saying is, this is existing retail. This, I mean, and not long ago was fully occupied retail space, 5 years ago. When we go back and say when Kmart was probably more booming, you're right, in the early mid-90s. So I think when we talk about this this isn't doing, and typically what I work on is new construction where it's tough because there's a hypothetical. This is existing retail with existing parking. We're not changing how much parking in there and how much a building is there. And what I'm I guess a little bit confused by is when the CSM was approved to do this exact thing, creating the hardship for this parcel, why was that not? Because that's what's brought us here now.
Can't they have a good neighbor policy?
That's
I
one
mean,
thing I
for
was going to
crying out
suggest.
loud, when Kmart was there used to be people that would park all the way along here. They'd spend a little time, boom, they were gone, or they'd go to Kmart and then they'd go to Webster's. And just because there's a lot line there, are you gonna put a wall up and say, gee, you can't go through here?
No,
Well, that's the point, I mean,
Well, no, there's actually.
you own the property, or somebody's gonna own this property, parcel B. And that has cost cutter, and I don't know if Century 21's gonna
Yep.
stay or not.
yep, they're.
But they park cars there too, so,
And there's rules that govern the operation of this center, and most of those that are unchangeable related to the access that you brought up.
right.
But the reality for everybody here representing the land, the Websters own their parcel and they bought it under the current conditions. Mark and his representative, they bought their parcel under this scenario. They knew this existed. So the hardship existed when they acquired the property and they knew of this problem then.
Right.
So, I mean, it's a mischaracterization to say that the city created the problem when they removed the lot lines. That's not correct. They bought this parcel with this problem.
Hold on, Phil.
And
Hold on, Phil.
we're willing
The
to.
public hearing is ended,
Yeah.
and
This
also,
is-
this
Dave,
is,
you gotta-
that is your opinion.
Yeah,
You gotta,
I understand about that.
I understand, Adam, but I'm at a loss here. I'm not sure. We got a problem that was originally created by the city when it built the parking lot. Somehow, we have to find a way for these two businesses to live together and be happy. And I don't, I don't see any way to do that other than to grant the variance, to say, okay, park where you need to. I don't know what else we do.
I agree with you, Dave. And if it is a problem, Hy-Vee has every right to put those signs up, and then they have every right if somebody is not shopping in Hy-Vee and they're shopping in parcel A.
I've lived in Ripon since 1982, and I don't remember ever seeing that parking lot overflowing.
Correct. That's
Even
my
when
point
Kmart
also.
was as busy as Pick and Save, I've never seen it overflowing. And I think,
They took part of that parking lot and they used to put product out there
yeah,
for landscaping and stuff, so it was kind of like that,
well, and
Building never
Kmart
had
also
that
had
many
their
people.
big tent sales out there, so.
yeah.
Kmart also closed though.
If they
Yeah, well, that
were,
was before.
If they were to
And
put a
I've been here a
tent.
long time.
and take a third of that parking lot here for
No
a
motion.
tent sale
There's
for
no
these
motion.
retailers, where are they parking?
Can we grant the variance on the condition that that parking lot be used only as a parking lot? That they not put buildings, structures, temporary buildings, tents?
I think if they put anything in there that affects their parking lot, that affects what you approve, and it causes them to violate what the variance allows. So by allowing it, if they go under it, by adding a building, it by default becomes non-compliant again. So I think that would be tackled or handled in a different process via a zoning approval and plan commission.
Can we, in granting the variance, can we specify that that's the intent of the variance?
You can specify that that's the intent of the variance.
Okay. What's the pleasure of the committee?
I'm in the same boat with you. I want to think about it here a minute.
Well, I'll make a motion to approve the variance.
I'll second that. And the reason why is because there's existing lot lines there to begin with. And we have no idea what's going in parcel A as far as retail. So we don't know if they're just gonna use it as a warehouse, as they have been, and part of it, or if they're going to have, I don't think a big box store is gonna come back into that.
Right. And
Not Ripon.
right now, we're being told it's about a 40,000 square foot business going in there.
Right. And as long as they don't build a building on the other part of the parking lot on parcel A, I think that would be adequate for the city as it is now.
And your motion is with no caveats at all?
Correct, because I feel that they already know they can't sell that outlot up here, and they'll really cut themselves short with parking then.
I would prefer to include a caveat. Again, I don't know that it has the force of law, but it lets them know that this is our intent. and
I'll
that-
accept
that
the
if
friendly
they-
amendment to my
Okay,
motion.
that the parking lot not be used for other uses, that not be, I don't know. Adam, help me out here, or
I
Len.
think the intention is that the parking requirements are set, and that the intention with it is the remaining parking lot remain that,
They have to maintain,
They have to
they have to maintain
compliance.
present capacity.
yeah.
Okay.
Present
Present
capacity
capacity.
based on the expected
Based on the-
retail
yeah,
space.
Based on the existing lot,
Yep, and the number of stalls that they
Thank
have
you, Al.
currently.
yeah.
Yeah.
Since I seconded that, I'll agree with the amendment.
Okay.
Any other discussion?
You want to read that amendment or motion back?
No, I don't.
Okay, sorry. Sorry, buddy.
I'll write it.
Just so we make sure we know what we're voting on there.
Variance, with the caveat of the parking lot being maintained at present capacity. I did.
Yeah, present parking capacity, say. Any further discussion? Okay, we have a motion on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Hi,
John, and
You still thinking?
Yeah, I'll go yes.
Dave, what are you doing?
Current stalls.
I think we have to, I sympathize with your problem, I understand, but I think we have to support this.
They never proved a hardship, guys.
Well,
Thanks. Can we get a motion to adjourn another meeting?
motion to adjourn.
Second.
favor?
Aye.